Turn on the recording, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you all. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So today we are going to learn communication. There is something wrong with the audio. I keep hearing my own echo. Do you also have the same problem?
Yes.
Anyways, let's begin. So today we are going to talk about communication models. Before I begin, I would like to ask you all a question. And my question is that have you ever learned something in physics, in biology, in mathematics with the help of a model? In maths, I'm sure you may have learned Pythagoras theorem, which was a model. So that model was related to a triangle, and it says that there are people who are waiting. Wait a minute. I was talking about a model which is named as Pythagoras theorem in mathematics. And it says, if I'm not mistaken, it says that hypotenuse square of a triangle is equal to its base square plus perpendicular square. Similarly, you may have learned models in science, like in chemistry, in biology, in maybe physics. Do you remember studying Bohr's atomic model? Very good.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, I would like you to talk briefly about your experience of studying models. And I'm going to ask you a question. For that, I'm asking you to answer the question. The question is, what do you think what models do for us? You can say anything, that models simplify information for us. Models tell us complex things in easier way, or anything that comes in your mind. What do models do for us?
They help explain things in a better way.
Please tell me your name before you speak.
And
Hmm?
just
I cannot hear properly. I'm sorry. Let me use my headphones. Maybe this has to do with the headphones. Do you need headphones? I'll be finishing class in just 30 minutes. Sorry. Hmm? Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's
Yes,
better.
ma'am.
Okay. Who was speaking? Sorry.
I was
May I know your name?
just there.
Khadija. Okay. Yeah, Khadija, what were you saying?
And I was saying that
Say it one more time, Khadija. I lost your voice. I'm sorry.
and the models help explain things in a better way,
Uh-huh.
and they're more understandable that way.
Very
The
good.
concepts.
Very good. Can you relate it with any model that you studied in any of your classes?
Ma'am, I can't hear you.
Can you relate what you just said to your learning in any of your classes? Okay, never mind. Probably she cannot hear me for some reason. Anyways, so in today's lecture, we are going to learn what communication models are. This is basically an introductory lecture related to communication models. This is my next screen. Here we are learning what is a model. Okay. Wait a minute. Okay, so you can see this on screen. It says that model is a consciously simplified description in graphic form of a piece of reality. So model, for example, we were talking about Pythagoras theorem, and it tells us that if you if you want to find out hypotenuse, so just take this, sorry, yes, hypotenuse, its square is equal to base square plus perpendicular square in a triangle. And this way you can find any side of the triangle if you know two sides of a triangle. What model does here for us is that it simplifies information and it gives us in the form of an equation, specifically in Pythagoras theorem. So models actually come in the form of graphics, in the form of sketches, in the form of diagrams, in the form of equations. And what they do for us is they simplify information for us. That is what they do. Let's talk about second bullet. Second bullet says that model shows the main elements of any structure or process and the relationship between elements. With that, have you ever seen a model of a building? Let's say you enter a shopping mall and the shopping mall is quite big. Right at its entrance, you see a big model. What does it tell you? It tells you about different components in that structure of a shopping mall. It tells you if you want to eat food, here is the cafe, here is the dining area. If you want to use toilets, toilets are on the second floor in this specific direction. If you want to go shop, do shopping for women, women's shopping is on this floor, children's shopping is on this floor. Similarly, you may have seen models of buildings of airports, models of mosques. I'm sure you may have seen a model of a building at some point in your life. And models of buildings are quite common, especially in the buildings that are really, really huge. I remember seeing last time when I visited mosque in Behria town, there is this big mosque. Is that called Grand Mosque? Is that called Grand Mosque? Yeah, that's called
Yes,
Grand
ma'am. Grand Jamia Mosque.
Yes, good. It's called Grand Jamia Mosque. Last time I visited it around 3 months ago, and I think it's second floor they have a model of the mosque. So what does the model do? It tells us about the components. Here is the courtyard, here is the prayer area, here is the area for wuzu, here are toilets and all that. So what does a model do? It shows the main elements of a structure or the process. In this case, in communication models, we will discuss models related to communication, which is a process. And not only that, it also model tells us relationship between elements as well. With that, I just explained. Would anyone like to repeat with that? What are the different forms we can find models? Models can be found in the form of a diagram, in the form of an equation, in the form of a picture, in the form of a small structure. Like I just gave you the example of the model of a mosque that I saw a few months ago. So this is all about models. Any question? If you do not have any question, I would like to proceed with my next slide. Any questions so far?
No, ma'am.
Okay, let's talk about the next slide now. Okay, this is my next slide. Here we are going to talk about different functions of model, like what sort of functions models perform for us. Okay, so before I began, we were talking about this idea that models simplify things for us, don't they? And this is the first point that I have written about functions of model. It says models organize information. How do they organize information? They put things in order. They demonstrate relationship of components. Okay, so let's talk about the process of communications. Right now I am communicating with you all. I am the sender of the message. And how am I communicating? I am communicating by using my laptop, by using this medium of internet. Okay? And you all are receivers. Similarly, if one of you communicates or wants to communicate, give me a minute, there is a person in the waiting room. If all of you, if someone of you wants to participate or wants to communicate, of course you will speak using your mic and your camera, and you will communicate using this laptop, this technology. Technology is the medium, and you will be communicating with all the receivers. with all the participants who will be receiving your information. So this is a process which is happening. And if I try to present this in the form of a model, how can I make the model? I will write sender, then I'll make a arrow, and then I'll write medium. Sender sends information which goes through a medium and then is received. I'll make another arrow, and that information is then received by receivers. See, don't you think in this process I am putting things in order? Okay? Just give me a minute, excuse me. Now I am going to make a sketch of the process that I just shared with you, and I am going to write, I'm just going to write what I described. Okay. Now, can you all see what I just wrote? Here I have written sender. Sends information, I made an arrow. It goes through medium, and the medium that we are using right now is technology, is computer, my laptop and internet. And then I made another arrow, and the information is going to you all, and you all are receivers. Okay? What I have done in this picture is I have described the process of communication which is happening right now in the form of an equation. Do you see this equation on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
So I have described the process which is happening right now in the form of an equation, and here I have made a model. Now, by looking at this picture, the equation that I just showed you, don't you think I have put things in order? Don't you think I have also demonstrated the relationship of components? How many components have I shown in this picture? How many components? Three. Very good. So does it tell the relationship? If I minus this part, medium, is communication possible?
No.
No, there has to be a medium. So it's telling us the components that are involved in this process. Without this thing, without this middle thing, which is a medium, the process of communication cannot happen. It cannot occur. So medium has to be there. Don't you think that the equation that you just saw, it tells you the relationship of components that are involved? It does tell you the relationship. And it also helps you perceive the whole, that you like just by looking at this equation, you can see the whole process, can't you? So this is how models make things easier for us. This is how models make things simple for us. In a way, they simplify information for us, and it tells you a general overview or picture of a phenomenon. Does anyone have any questions so far? If no, I will proceed. Okay, this is the last slide for today. Actually, I have planned that we will spend this week talking about what are models, how do they help us, what are their different functions, and why do we need models. This is what we are going to do for the whole week. I will finish this lecture, the remaining part of this lecture, on Wednesday, and for Friday I will assign you an activity. Okay. This is my
Ma'am,
next.
Manisa is waiting in the waiting room. She got disconnected.
Okay, I just allowed her to enter. Okay. Okay. Now this is my next slide. It says that models provide us explanation. They explain us things. How do they explain us? They explain us things by providing a simple information which would otherwise be difficult. Okay. Now let me ask you two questions, and I would like you to answer me those questions with a little bit of consideration and with a little bit of thinking. My first question is, take a couple of minutes to think about the question that I'm going to ask, and then you can answer that question by raising your hands. When you raise your hands, I'll know that, okay, this person wants to speak, and then I'll let you speak. Okay. Okay. My first question is, Is communication a complex phenomenon or a simple phenomenon? If complex, why do you think so? And give me examples to explain. This is my first question. And we have to talk about all sorts of communication, like communication that happens through TV, that happens through film, that happens through newspaper, that happens through social media, Twitter, Facebook, anything. So that is my first question. When you are done with preparing your answer, please raise your hands. But for some of you, your names are not appearing on screen. I would like you to set up your names, because whenever I want to ask you a question or something, I can actually know who am I talking to. Okay, so I'll repeat my question. My question is communication a simple process or a complex process? So let's talk about this.
Ma'am,
Go ahead, Misha.
yeah, ma'am, I feel that it is a complex process because we haven't talked about the element of noise in the equation that you just showed.
Yes.
Otherwise, other models also include the element of noise, which makes
Yes.
it more complex.
Yes, very good. I drew a very simple kind of diagram just to explain, but that's very good. Noise is like people who are in the waiting room, who are trying to enter. That is anything that kind of works as a barrier in the smooth flow of communication is noise. If you lose my voice because of internet issue, or let's say anything, that is also noise. If you are let's say, so anything that kind of restricts or affects the flow of communication would be noise. So you were saying that communication is a complex process. Are we all on the same page in terms of answering this question, that communication is a complex process?
Ma'am?
Yes, go ahead, please tell me your name.
Ma'am, I'm Jean.
Go ahead, Ambreen.
Ma'am, I think it's a complex process because it involves a series of steps.
Yes.
And it involves how the sender encodes a message and then the receiver decodes it.
Yes, very good, very good. So Ambreen talked about some really good points. He said that it's a process that involves many steps. Like she gave examples of encoding and decoding. We'll talk about them in our next few lectures, inshallah, in detail. If anyone is confused about the terms encoding, decoding, you do not need to, because I will be elaborating them in our next lectures. See, today is our first lecture, and it's very sort of basic lecture. We are only talking about some introductory stuff related to models. So, but we will talk about, inshallah, encoding and decoding in next coming classes. Excuse me. So yes, communication is a complex process. Why is it a complex process? Let me talk about that very briefly. Give me a minute. Excuse me. Excuse me, sorry, I'm back. So I was talking about communication as a complex process. First of all, why is it a complex process? It is a complex process because it is a kind of phenomenon that has many elements involved in it. Like I am communicating with you, and just imagine this very equation that I showed you. This has many elements: sender, receiver, message, medium, and then there is noise. So it's a process that has many components involved in it. And when we will study some more models in future, you will know that it's a process that has multiple steps, it has multiple components involved in it, multiple elements. This makes this process complex. And then this is a kind of process that comes with effects as well. Think about examples from advertising. Sometimes it happens that when you see a message on media, you are affected by it. You are affected by it to the extent that you tend to change your behavior. Has it ever happened to you that after watching a particular advertisement, you change your behavior? So, for example, let me give you example. You see an advertisement of a cell phone service. Let's say you see the advertisement of Jazz phone service, but you are already using Bharat. But after seeing that Jazz service, Jazz advertisement, you think about changing your cell phone service. So that is change of behavior. So see, it is a process that also brings change of behavior, change of attitude. So this process doesn't have to be simple. It is definitely a complex process that comes with effects, that comes with many impacts, repercussions, that comes with many components, and components are interrelated. For this reason, it is important for us to study communication at length. For this reason, it is important for us to study communication in detail. And for this very reason, models are helpful for us. Any question? Do we have any questions so far?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, this is this is what I wanted to ask before I begin this slide. First question was that I already asked you, that is communication a complex process. The second question that I want to ask is that which information seems more simple? If I say that the communication process which is happening right now involves a sender, a medium, which is technology, and then receivers, who are my students. Now, is this description more understandable, or is this equation more understandable? So out of these two examples, is the first example easier to understand, or second example easier to understand?
Ma'am, I think both are equally understandable.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. There is no difference.
but the reason is that the process that I'm trying to explain is quite simple. But when we explain it with more components, the example that I drew here is quite simple. If I add a bit more components here, let's say if I add the component of noise, if I also add the component of message, so will it be will it be easier to understand if I tell you this process in a descriptive form, or will it be easier to understand if I tell you this process in the form of a model? Which one is simpler?
In the form of the model.
Yeah.
In the form of a
Descriptive
model.
form, ma'am.
Yes. See, this is what it says. Models provide us simple information which would otherwise be difficult. Okay, let's talk about our third element. And excuse me for a minute. All right. So third component says models have heuristic function. This may be a bit tricky for you to understand. Let me explain, and then I'll ask you if you have questions. Let me explain the word heuristic. A heuristic thing is that you let someone understand something by himself or herself. So, which means that you let them learn on their own. You let people understand things by themselves. Now, model is a kind of thing which is self-explanatory. If you show someone a model, they can make sense of it just by looking at its components. When we began, I gave you the example of a Pythagoras theorem. Do you think that I can make someone, a student from high school, let's say a ninth grader or a 10th grader, I can make him learn Pythagoras theorem just by looking at the picture, or the picture of the model, or just by looking at the equation of the model? I think the student can make sense of the model just by looking at its equation. He doesn't have to go into the details of the paragraph or in the information which is which is given in his mathematics book. So models have this heuristic function. You show someone a model and they can make sense of it just by looking at it. That this is what we mean by heuristic function. Does anyone have any question related to heuristic function of model? It simply says that you can make people learn things by themselves. And how does it do that? It model provides key elements of a process or a system. So that is how you can make people learn things on by themselves. Basam, is that all making sense for you? Basam Altaf.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Basam, you were with me. I remember you were with me in MCOM 101. And now
Yes,
you,
ma'am.
did you also take the course copywriting with me? I do not.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay, good. Let's move on to our fourth point, which says that models help us predict things. Models tell us, I mean, by just looking at a model, we can predict, we can foretell that what can be the consequences, what can be the outcomes, or what can be the effects. Many of these components and many of these points that we are discussing here will become clearer to you once we start discussing models, and that is okay. Once we start discussing models, I'll come back to some parts of this lecture and I'll keep asking you if all of this makes sense for you. And soon after we finish this lecture, I'm trying to find the chat box. Okay, so soon after we finish this lecture, which is introductory lecture related to models, this is our first model that we are going to discuss, Laswell's model. And probably we will discuss this, we will start discussion on this by this coming Friday, or probably by next Monday, inshallah. Okay, this would be our first model that we will be discussing. With this, I'm going to finish today's lecture, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen as well. I have only 8 minutes left for this class, and I want to save some time for attendance, and I want to save some time for taking your questions as well. Students, I have recorded this lecture, and I'm going to upload it on Moodle along with a PDF document that is notes that is related to notes related to this lecture. I highly recommend that you finish the reading of those notes before the end of this week.
Ma'am, is there going to be any WhatsApp group for this course?
I don't use WhatsApp much, so no, but if you want to create on your own, you can. I usually don't create WhatsApp groups.
Okay,
For me, email is the best mode of communication.
Okay, ma'am.
And those of you who have experience with me, they know that I am very responsive to emails. I usually respond within a day if you have any question. Any other question? Yes, Ambreen, your understanding is quite right about models. If you have any question and you want to write in the chat box, you can do that too. But you can always participate as well. There is one more thing, students. If I upload recorded lectures on Moodle, this does not mean that you do not come in classes and you do not take part. I think those recordings are only for those people who at times have connectivity issues, or sometimes during the class who face the problem of power outages. But they are definitely not substitute for these sort of interactions. Okay? Let me now, I'm going to stop the recording.